Good morning, everybody. You are listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. And today we have our very special guest, Dakota Worrell. And guys, you are definitely going to want to listen in because this is very impressive of a story. I know little about Dakota. I don't know a ton. But what I do know is he's pretty amazing. And I'm excited to dive into this. So, without further ado, we are going to dive on in and hear Dakota's story. First of all, Dakota, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Yoshi.
I really appreciate it. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, to talk right into the mic. These are like very sensitive mics. They captured a very small range. Okay, so, is that cord not long enough? There we go. I could bring that closer to you. All right, so, guys, what we're going to be talking about is the ins and outs of investing in commercial apartment buildings. We will be discussing the top questions Dakota is asked by young entrepreneurs. Now, Dakota's young himself, so I want to know how young these entrepreneurs are. When you talk about young entrepreneurs, are they 15?
We get a lot of people under the age of 20 who end up buying their first investments with us.
Nice. That's very nice. Awesome. Guys, Dakota's 24. I'm going to get into that later, but we're going to talk about this. How young he is, and that's why it's so impressive. We'll also be hearing about a nightmare story and the lesson you can learn from someone else's mistakes, and so much more. So let me tell you a little bit about Dakota. Dakota is an established multifamily real estate investor. At only 24 years old, he's remodeled over 100 units, currently owns 62 plus highly performing apartments, a master of seller financing. Dakota became a millionaire at the age of 21 and intends to add 40 more doors to his portfolio and retire by 25 at the end of 2020. Dakota is currently serving as the president of SLREA, which stands for the Salt Lake Real Estate Investing Association. You've heard me talk about that before. I sat on the board for 5 years ago. The largest real estate investors association in Utah. Dakota is extremely passionate about helping young entrepreneurs. He has been teaching free real estate investment classes at night and has personally helped 28 other young investors purchase their first investment property. He's currently less than 2 months away from launching DW Education, which he hopes to use to teach young entrepreneurs around the country. Dakota works closely with Eternal Hope Nepal International, which is a 501c3 that helps and educate children in Nepal and bring them back up to grade level. He travels to Nepal every year to see the 10 children that he sponsors and track their progress. Eternal Hope Nepal International may even be featured in this year's General Conference. That is so cool. That is so cool. We had Randall on a few weeks ago, and he was telling us about Eternal Hope Nepal, and it's such an amazing charity and organization that you guys created.
Yeah, Randall and Usha truly they're doing God's work out there. The first time I was a little bit skeptical, so I got on a plane and traveled with him to Nepal to see where the money was going, and I just couldn't believe the work that was being done out in the open air classrooms, and even just year to year, because I've gone a couple times now, seeing how the girls that I sponsor, how their English has progressed and how much happier and healthier they look, because there's a lot of medical and health camps that are being done through the charity as well, and it's truly impactful.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Love hearing about that. Well, Dakota, I want to dive into this. People are dying to know, first of all, I'm dying to know how someone does what you do so young. But before we get into that, if you don't mind sharing, you work with a lot of young entrepreneurs. What are the top 3 questions you are typically asked by young entrepreneurs? And if you could elaborate a little bit on that. I've got the 3 questions in front of me, so if we could start with the first one, which is, how much money do I need to get started? What's your thoughts on that?
This is literally the first question that we always get asked, and most young entrepreneurs, they want to invest in real estate, but they carry with them the notion that real estate's a wealthy man's game, when it's actually completely the opposite. Most wealthy men were poor when they first started investing in real estate and became wealthy along that journey. Real estate is a hard asset. It's got excellent leverage, and therefore it's actually like one of the lowest barriers of entry of all investment venues, especially for people in my generation I really believe that it's one of the last consistent paths available to us to actually creating wealth at any notable speed. Between 3.5% down payments to start house hacking multi-units and being able to get city and state level grant programs, there really is nothing that should be stopping a young and hungry entrepreneur from breaking into this industry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's very cool that you say that because, yeah, with interest rates so low and the amount that you need down, I mean, you really don't need to be a rich man to get into this game.
No, I got quoted at 2.75 6 days ago. That's basically free money.
Seriously.
I mean, even if I was sitting on $1 billion, I certainly wouldn't be using it at those rates.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Awesome. All right, so let's dive into the second question. Somebody comes up to you and says, Dakota, I have a friend who wants to partner with me so that we can buy our first deal together. What do you think?
So this is where I'm the dissenting opinion, because there's a lot of people in real estate that really preach the values of partnership to grow, and I'm kind of the one person who doesn't believe in them as much, and especially when you're young. So here's my first point, is I think it's way easier to find money in other deals than it is to find other good friends.
Yeah.
And so when you find a good friend, I always keep in mind that they say the first ship to sink is always a partnership.
Oh, yeah.
And especially for young entrepreneurs where the barrier of entry is so low, just a 3.5% down payment.
Yep.
It makes way more sense just to put your head to the grindstone and save up the money to do it yourself. Not only is your ROI going to be higher, but young investors always undervalue the ability to be mobile. When you have a partner, you can't just sell or leverage the property on a dime if you need to, and that could equate to millions lost in opportunity costs. When you're young and you're getting into business, it's really like you're drinking from a fire hose.
Right.
The weakest link is never going to be the property. It's going to be the people involved, and especially where you're learning to throw another moving part in there with a partner. I really think that you're asking for trouble, and you can't afford to take the loss, because at the end of the day, attorneys are expensive.
Yes, it is expensive. That's for sure. That is for sure. And I've had, when you're young and you're starting out, like whether you're young or old, whether this is your first partnership, you don't know what you don't know, right? And in the beginning, everything seems grand and dandy, but the first hiccup that comes that you didn't know would come, and now you don't know how your partner's going to react to that hiccup, and he doesn't know how you're going to react, and you both react completely different. It could be a complete nightmare early.
If you know that you don't know what you don't know, then you're one step ahead. But unfortunately, when we're first starting, especially, I guess I can't speak for everyone, but speaking for myself, I thought I knew a lot more than I really knew.
Right.
And I think that's more dangerous than anything else.
That is so true. Very, very true. Great advice. Okay, let's dive into this next question. What would you say, and this is the question I'm excited about, because 21 years old, that's not normal unless you're LeBron James or someone coming out of college into the NBA. And even NBA players don't get $1 million contract or anything. Some of them get in the 100,000s. But what's the quickest path to becoming a millionaire? As for those of you just tuning in, Dakota did this by the age of 21. So please, Dakota.
This is kind of the most annoying question to be asked, and it's one that we just get so frequently, because the second somebody phrases it like that, what's the quickest way for me to become a millionaire, something goes off in my head and I instantly start to question whether that person actually has what it takes to achieve that level of success. And here's why. For people who are motivated by money and status, being an entrepreneur is going to be really difficult and probably not very fun for them. Because the truth is, it means living broke. Why have I been able to kind of shatter records and do this so young? I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. But the truth is that it's because I lived very frugally. Even at times in my career where I was making $90,000 a month, literally for the whole year.
Wow.
Hannah and I were living on $1,800 a month.
Wow.
We were slumming it, and there are a lot of people who make a lot more money than me, and they don't have nearly as much disposable income.
Oh, so true.
And so when we talked about you don't know what you don't know, right? Especially trying to grow this fast in a short period of time, there were tons of times where we got hit with things that we weren't prepared for. And if we had raised our cost of living to match our income, we wouldn't have survived.
Yes.
And so, the quickest way to become a millionaire, you're living lean, and you're spending 99% on your business and 1% on yourself, and you're just young and hungry.
Awesome. Love it. I love it. Just out of curiosity, how did you understand this mentality and mindset before 21?
So, honest answer, Yoshi?
Yes.
I didn't.
You didn't.
And here was the major advantage that I had in my career that most people aren't going to have in theirs, and why it's so important that people be wise, right?
Right.
Because I was always very intelligent, and an intelligent person learns from their mistakes.
Sure.
A wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
Right.
So when I started investing in real estate right at the beginning of 2015, the market was going wild, right? You buy a house, 3 months later you made 50 grand. You did nothing.
Right.
Right? Real estate did not take a lot of skill at that point in time to make money. And of course, so you can imagine 19 to 21-year-old Dakota making 7 figures, letting it go to his head, being very egotistical about it all. But the truth is I was making huge mistakes, right? So I would buy a property, I would lose 30 grand, but over the next 6 months it would appreciate 80,000, right? So it looked like I was making 50 grand, and the truth is that the market was very rapidly paying for all my mistakes. And so I think what I got was basically a 5-year intensive training course where I got to experiment with everything and make mistakes rapidly and not actually lose any money.
That's great.
And that's I didn't understand, but thankfully I was able to learn in a way that didn't cripple me.
Yeah.
And now I'm quite good at it.
Yes.
But it wasn't something that happened like I woke up and one day understood real estate, because I'm still learning to this day.
That's awesome. Wow, that's very cool. Very cool. It's interesting. I talk about with other investor friends of mine how, depending on the side of the fence you were on in that recession, the market was either very forgiving, and I should say when it was coming back up, the market was either very forgiving because you could make mistakes, but it was going up anyway. Or if you were at the other end where you had already bought a bunch of stuff and it was going down, that whole up and down thing was either very terrible or very forgiving for investors. So interesting. I love that. Okay, very cool. So you talked about how wise men learn from other people's mistakes. Guys, that's why the nightmare stories, that was fun for me, because I have plenty of nightmare stories, and I'd rather learn from somebody else's mistakes. So you're going to want to stay tuned. We're going to cut to commercial break. When we come back, we're going to hear from Dakota a nightmare story. Actually, before we cut to commercial, Dakota, I wanted to ask you a really quick question. Sometimes I get asked by young individuals who are just starting in real estate, and with you being an apartment guy, I thought this would be the perfect question for you, and with you being so young. I get asked by young investors that are just starting, should I start in single family, or should I just focus my energy and jump right into apartment buildings? Do you mind sharing your thoughts on that?
I completely skipped the single family phase. There's kind of this natural trajectory people tend to take where they start with single family, they do some flipping to get capital so that they can move into multifamily deals. I went straight into multifamily, and loan programs have changed a lot even since just I've started.
Got it.
But no, for 3.5% down, or even now they've got 5% down owner-occupied conventional options for multifamily.
Right.
It is almost certainly the best option to start with multi-units. And the reason being is that when you're young, the first wall that you're going to hit is your debt-to-income ratios. And the cash flow from having multiple units being rented out is going to be, especially because they're only going to accept 75% of it, right? Because they're going to eliminate 25% for vacancy that hasn't existed in a long time.
Right.
And that income being added to your income is going to offset that payment and be what actually allows you to grow. Because you don't want to be growing on a cash basis.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be leveraging these low interest rates and buying on cash flow.
Got it. Very cool. Okay, great advice, guys. Take some notes. Now we're going to cut to commercial break. When we come back, Dakota's going to share a nightmare story, which, again, I like learning from other people's mistakes opposed to mine. I've learned from plenty of mine. All right. With smartphones and technology making life a little easier, the Snap Leash has also been designed to make life a little easier for you and your pup. Whether you're out on a stroll in the park, or possibly a walk through the city, or maybe even a hike up in the mountains, the Snap Leash is the perfect leash for you. The Snap Leash can easily and conveniently convert into 7 types of leashes, making the Snap Leash the most convenient leash in the world. What other leash do you know that is 7 leashes in one? With the Snap Leash having appearances on the Today Show in New York City, TV47 in Dallas, Texas, and ABC4 in Midday, Utah, you are definitely going to want to take a peek at what the Snap Leash can do for you and your best friend. Make life a little easier for you and your pup, and visit www.snapleash.com today. Alright guys, we are back. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. You are listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. Our special guest, Dakota Worrell, is talking about apartment building investing. Very cool stuff. So, Dakota, if you don't mind sharing this nightmare story that you've prepared for us. The audience and I do enjoy learning from others' mistakes rather than our own, and so it's a good opportunity to kind of get a feel for what we should not do.
Yeah, I mean, this story was awful. It was the culmination of pretty much every mistake I had been making coming together all in one project. Right as I was really beginning to hit my stride as an investor, I got cocky and I started skipping steps. I went from being worth $1 million to interviewing bankruptcy attorneys all in the span of a year.
Ooh.
So, things can change very quickly in this business.
Yes.
So, I kind of went into this property starry-eyed. It was a 16-unit, near-condemned building, and it was the largest project that I had taken on to date, because it wasn't just the unit count, it was the condition, right? And having to bring a building back from condemnation, and all the bureaucracy that goes with that. And what was crazy about this is I was sure that it was going to make my career.
Yeah.
Like, I thought this was going to be the turning point for me, and it was, but not in the positive way that I had imagined. So, because I was so sure it was going to make my career, I purchased it without any real due diligence. I didn't check to make sure that I had the correct licensing to pull down this project. And on top of that, I bought it with hard money. My first ever hard money loan that I had ever done, and I have an interest payment of $8,300 a month.
Whew.
Interest only, right?
Yes.
So it's painful. So, make sure that you bring a third party with you when you walk through these buildings, so that you've got at least somebody with common sense there to check to see,
Right.
to make sure you know what you're doing. But right after I purchased the building, I pretty much got smacked in the face. And the owner that I bought it from knew this, didn't disclose it.
Oh.
That the city had plans to tear this building down, basically changed the zoning, right? Had changed the zoning out from multifamily to single family.
Ouch.
And wanted to tear it down to build all single families.
Oh man.
So I just bought this, $830,000 building that now was worth, I don't know, $200,000, maybe a quarter of what I purchased it for, because it was only worth the land it was sitting on.
Yeah.
And it made the process of obtaining the permits nearly impossible, because the city did not want this building renovated.
Oh.
They wanted to actually buy it through eminent domain and tear it down themselves.
Oh wow.
And I, unwittingly, by buying it and applying for permits, stopped the clock and basically kind of threw myself in the middle of the city's plans. And so they held my permits for 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
And there were some attorneys involved, but even if you discount the attorneys, 3 months times the $8,300.
Yeah.
Right, so right there I lost over $24,000 that I couldn't move or do anything.
Yeah.
And, they even went as far as having city attorneys try to compel me to sell the building to them at a massive loss. So that was an excruciatingly painful experience. The one thing I learned from that was take a building inspector with you through each major project before you buy it. Because as much as you like to believe it, it's hard to fight the man.
Yeah.
So after I purchased the property, and very much against the advice of my mentor, I know, young Dakota thought he had mentors but didn't need to listen to them.
Sure.
I purchased $180,000 of materials.
Oh.
Right? And my dad at the time had been telling me, Dakota, look, keep the cash in the bank, don't worry about the materials, buy it as you need it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I want to go buy wholesale, I want to buy bulk, it's Black Friday, right? I'm like, I'm going to save 20 grand. And so what happened is I had $180,000 of materials on site. 16 fridges, 16 stoves, 16 microwaves, 2x4s, concrete, literally countertops, everything you need, cabinets. And two things happened. One, it created a massive storage issue, right? Mm-hmm. Because now I'm having to go make sure nobody's robbing $180,000 of materials. But that would have been manageable. But the problem, the hard lesson I learned here is that $180,000 of material on site was worthless when I was dying to hard money payments because I couldn't get my permits and couldn't pay my contractors.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When that money in the bank would have helped resolve this issue a lot sooner.
Right.
Right? So I'm sitting with all this inventory and no money to operate my business with. Lesson there, listen to your mentor.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's crazy because people forget, right? When you're held up like that, you've lined up your subcontractors, you've lined up your contractors, and they can't start, right?
That's right.
And they've got to pay their guys, so they're out taking other projects. Now you're further delayed even when you do get your permits.
Oh, yes.
And it's just a mess, right?
Right.
Your deposits are down, and they lose motivation, and it's hard. So I had a business partner with me at that time who was going to help me take down the renovation of this project. And like the day we got our permits, I'm serious. Like basically the day we got our permits, we showed up for work and he didn't.
Oh no!
And we found out that he had been arrested for a pretty serious crime, and that de facto collapsed our company.
Oh my god!
Mid-project. So we had 14 employees at the time. I had to lay off every single one of them, of course. Later on, I tried to save them, but over the course of a couple months, we had to lay them off. That was incredibly emotional. They were crying. I was crying. And that was another life lesson right there, right? If you're going to go into business with somebody, you need to pull a background check. Mm-hmm. We think about this in apartments. If somebody wants to rent a $500 apartment for us, we run their credit, we pull a background check, we verify their employment, we call references, but for some reason when it comes to business partners, we just think, oh, they've got money, they must be reputable.
Right.
Big mistake. And so we're learning on the fly. I like to say school fees, right?
Yes.
And at this point in the project, I had a graduate's degree. So, so after collapsing my company and the project being stalled, I ended up hiring a new construction company and general contractor to come in and finish it. And, at this point, I just can't catch a break because it turns out they stole another general contractor's license number.
Oh, my God.
And ended up stealing another $100,000 from me.
Wow.
So, you can imagine basically working for years to kind of build up this nest egg and to basically see over the span of 4 months, at 4 months here between collapsing my company, $180,000 of materials, hard money costs, losing $100,000 here. I've lost basically half of my net worth.
Oh, jeez.
In 4 months.
Yeah.
So
stressful.
Well, you can see I'm 24 and I'm going bald, right? I'm balding here, and I attribute a lot of that to that project. So I've learned verify the license numbers, call the references, and never pay anything up front to contractors. Provide them verification of funds. You can even have it escrowed if you want, but always pay in arrears. Because if I had done that, this would have been fine. The first day they didn't show up for work, I would have lost time.
Right.
And I would have pivoted.
Yeah.
But because of how I did things, which was incredibly irresponsible, and this sounds like common sense now, but I lost $100,000.
Oof.
Literally, and you equate that to money, but I see that as a year of my life.
Yeah.
I lost a year of my life that I had
yeah.
worked for. So then what did I do? I just, salt on the wound. I went and bailed my business partner out.
Okay.
And I did this, because I wanted to save my employees and I wanted to save my project. So you have to understand, this is about Christmas time, right? So we got 14 employees. I was hoping that by using the other general contractor, I could save some of my guys' jobs by having them work under them.
Right.
Right. And so it's Christmas time. People left their jobs to come work for us. And so I make the hard decision, basically, to bail this guy out, make the best of two bad decisions, and try to bail this guy out to save our jobs.
Yeah.
Some of them have kids. That was weighing really heavily on my soul.
Got it.
So we bail him out. He agrees that he's going to come on. He's going to put his nose to the grindstone. He's just going to work this. And the first thing he does is steal all of our company tools.
Oh my god.
Take off with our company trucks.
Wow.
And leave me alone. So I eventually, and that was the point I had actually lay our employees off.
Wow.
Right? Because I always figured if we weren't able to make payroll, I would start selling our inventory. I'd sell our trucks. I would do whatever I had to do to take care of my people, because they joined this company for me.
Yeah.
Right? That was my word on the line.
Right.
And next lesson, basically, if somebody's being criminally investigated, stay out of it.
Right.
There's a reason.
Yeah. Is he back in jail?
Oh yeah, he's in prison.
Oh. Okay.
So happy about that.
Right.
But I'm not happy for our employees that lost out, because I lost out, but they lost out too.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart, because when I took each one of them individually out on a walk, I said, "This is what's happened. This is what I tried to do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're at the end of the rope. Basically, I've got enough." Because I'm pulling money personally out of my accounts to pay payroll now, and on top of the interest payments and everything, I don't have a lot. So I basically said, "Guys, look, I've got enough to pay you for 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
Show up to work if you want to. You know what I mean? Go find another job.
Yeah.
This last paycheck's here."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of them understood and were telling me how bad they felt for me, not to worry about them. But and that almost made it worse.
Right. Right.
I was hoping someone would get mad at me and yell at me, because I kind of felt that's what I deserved. But people were really magnanimous, and so I learned, stay out of it.
Yeah, it's so true. When you go through a negative thing in your life, it's painful, but when that negative thing affects people that depend on you, it's heartbreaking. I loved how you worded that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's so true.
It was growing up, right, I'm sure everybody can identify with this, is like every year that passes, you look back on the previous year and you're like, holy cow, I've grown up so much. But if I had to look back at a moment where like I really grew up, like where I became humble, is when I was on top of the world like that and I fell so quickly, and ultimately there were 14 other people who paid the price for my actions, and that's where I learned what it meant to be a leader.
Right.
And the real cost of being a leader, because I think people hear leader and they only think about the positive benefits, but it was a transformative period in my life.
Wow.
So
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And I'd say for newbie investors, learn from this next lesson. Okay. Because this is another one I don't think anybody talks about.
Yeah.
I would say to never borrow money from somebody so wealthy that they don't need it back. Okay, and this is exactly what I did.
Got it.
It's a different mindset, because these type of people are more likely to do what's kind of called loan to own.
Yes.
Which is, and I should have known this. Who's writing a 20-year-old kid an $830,000 check, right? And the first flag should have been when they didn't run my credit.
Right.
But it was because they saw the building. If all this stuff hadn't gone wrong, I stood to make about a $500,000 after-tax paycheck.
Yeah.
Right? And they saw that too.
Yeah.
So they were loaning at these interest rates specifically hoping that I was going to default.
Right.
So that they could come into this property.
Yep.
And, you know, when I was on my knees and I was really struggling here, any other regular lender, or not regular, but any other decent lender would have really worked with me. Especially when I had a plan and proof that I was being tampered with by the city and outside influences. And I had a plan for how I was pulling together. I was selling my other buildings. I was doing a lot of very good faith efforts to make these payments. And I didn't miss a payment.
Wow.
Right?
That's great.
But as I saw the train crashing, I was proactive about communicating. I said, look, I've got the cash now, but 4 months from now, we might be in a pinch.
Yeah.
Can we start planning for this now? And, you know, if that lender had worked with me, I probably would have made $200,000 more than I did.
Got it.
Because I wouldn't have been pushed up against my balloon.
Right.
It was like I needed an extra 2 weeks.
Yes.
And I would have been able to take a much better offer.
But
it was the answer was no, because if I failed, that building was theirs.
Got it.
So, you know, now I'm working with Matt Strong. You know Matt Strong, right?
Yes.
And Matt Strong has just been phenomenal in every sense of the word. I will probably never, ever again in my life take hard money from somebody other than Matt.
Nice.
And, you know, I wish that it had been him on this transaction.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, again, you learn. I want to find a lender who has enough money where if stuff goes wrong, we can pivot and we can work together, but doesn't have so much money that they don't need it back.
Right. Yeah.
So
very good point.
Yeah, you know, and so in desperation to make my payments, I took out another partner on the building.
Oh.
And I structured it all wrong.
Oh.
Can you tell that this was just the hardest year of my life?
Yeah.
The way I structured it, I entitled him to half of my gains, half of all the money I was going to make.
Wow.
But none of my losses.
Oh.
So he got to share the profit, but he had, again, kind of what we just talked about, the lender.
Yeah.
No incentive to really help out because he wasn't splitting the loss.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, you know, I gave him the ability to block the sale of the property, which I didn't know I had done, really.
Right.
And the partner didn't have to make capital calls. So when we went above and beyond, it was still me bringing more cash to the building, and he had the ability to kind of sit back and say, you know, I'm not interested in doing that right now. And we ended up working it out, but it was a major headache, and it was a disaster waiting to happen. And the lesson here is have an attorney draft the docs.
Yeah.
And I always run into people who think they know the law and the nuances about the law and that they can structure this agreement. And all I would say to that, I would say two things. One, until you've been in a courtroom, right, I don't think you fully understand that you own what a judge says you own.
Right.
And your contract is secondary.
Right.
And two, I don't think people understand, and this was me being short-sighted because I was young, if you can't afford a couple $100 to pay an attorney, you can't afford to be a real estate investor.
Right.
And that's the harsh reality. Because if you don't spend the couple $100 to pay the attorney to draft the docs, you're going to spend $10,000 paying him, you know, to represent you in court.
Right, right.
And so that was rough, you know?
Yeah.
So then finally, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Okay.
So we get the building under contract to be sold. It's going to sell right before our balloon comes due. And a subcontractor that I had hired had heard that I was out of town, right? Because I went with Randall to Nepal to go support Eternal Hope International and see our kids. And the subcontractor, who had been paid, right? We paid him. We never not paid anybody.
Yeah.
Heard that we were out of town and forged documents that said they had served me in Utah when I was in Asia, right? And proceeded to record liens against the property that were false.
Oh my god.
And said that we hadn't paid them, essentially hoping that the building was supposed to sell before I got back so they get paid out, and now paid out before I could do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
So thank the Lord, you know, our title company caught it.
Yeah.
And we were able to basically get them to drop the lien and you know, pay us some money because what they did was blatantly fraud.
Yeah.
And the lesson here is, one, don't yell at your girlfriend while you're in Asia just because somebody's trying to steal money from you.
Oh, Hannah, is that true? I'm sure it is.
Yeah, she's not going to like that very much if you do that. And two, stay in contact with your title company, because that's the only reason this didn't fly.
Wow.
Right? And we're talking, on top of all the money I've lost in this transaction, we're talking they were going to get another basically 15 grand out of me, which hurts.
Yeah.
When you're living off Little Caesars, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can drop a lot farther than living off Little Caesars.
Yeah.
So, and finally, we gave our buyer a key to the building. And that seemed rational at the time, because we said, okay, this is a huge project. He's stepping into it half finished, right? There's a lot of due diligence. He doesn't want to schedule it with us every single time.
Yeah.
He wants to come through. So we give him a key. And I woke up one morning to find all my units listed for rent.
Oh my gosh.
While I was the owner, right?
Yeah.
On an active construction site.
Oh my
tools
gosh.
around.
Yeah.
Things not finished, railings not up. This is a huge liability.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Much less if somebody's signing contracts.
Right.
And filling your units without your permission.
Yeah.
Which thankfully we caught it. Thankfully we saw the ad, right? But people coming on and on the property, that's liability. People working on the property without consent, right? We haven't verified their workers' compensation, their general liability. That's all me liable for that.
Yes.
That they had put there, and basically people going in and out at all hours of the day and not being able to regulate who's there to steal our inventory and who's there by the buyer. So
amazing.
Yeah, don't give your buyer a key.
Yeah. Yes.
That year was ridiculously hard. I learned so much as an investor, as a business owner, as a person, right? That whole experience with my employees.
Yeah.
It was the most intensive 12-month training course that I ever could have taken, and I'm happy it sold, and I'm happy to be back at 100% capacity.
Nice.
But I could have very easily gone down there.
Yeah.
But because I survived, I've taken these lessons, like these 10 lessons I've just shared with you.
Yeah.
And just quantifiable on those lessons alone, I have taken on some significantly larger projects with absolutely no hitches.
Nice.
And we've made a lot of money implementing that.
Yes.
But for all of these things that sound like common sense when I'm sitting here saying it to you, for a young investor, if it's common sense, I'm glad.
Yeah.
And learn from my mistakes if it isn't.
Right.
Because it wasn't common sense for me.
Right. Right. That's intense. That is very intense. I appreciate you sharing that with myself and all the listeners. Lots of lessons to be learned there. I have a house that I call Coatesville University, because that house on Coatesville Avenue taught me a lot. So I refer to that house as Coatesville University. Those are the ones that you tend to learn the most from, those hard nightmare stories. Well, thank you, Dakota. We're going to jump to a commercial break. When we come back, Dakota's going to start sharing with us the step-by-steps of due diligence, which I'm excited to hear. I obviously do a lot of due diligence on single-family homes, just curious to see what he does different. So you're definitely not going to want to step away. We are going to cut to commercial break, and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Yoshi Shiraki, the author of the book, My Body's Just For Me, the book written for children to educate children on the prevention of child abuse. With the assistance of multiple best-selling author Richard Paul Evans, we were able to publish this book as a tool to help break the ice in an easy and innocent way to help children understand and learn how to speak up and communicate. I've been invited numerous times onto Good Things Utah to discuss the importance of good communication with your child in regards to abuse, and also to discuss how the book, My Body's Just For Me, is a great tool for every parent when having that tricky conversation with their children. For more information on the book, My Body's Just For Me, please visit www.protectourangels.com today. And remember, the more we focus on prevention, the less we'll have to focus on rehabilitation. All right, guys, you are listening to K-Talk Radio 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. We've got our very special guest, Dakota Worrell, talking about apartment building investing today. And now we are going to dive into, we just heard a very intense nightmare story. I was stressed as you were telling the story. Glad to hear the guy's in prison.
Yeah.
But now we're going to move on to due diligence. And due diligence, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, it's basically the work that you put in pre-purchasing a property. You typically have a property under contract, and now you're just dotting your I's, crossing your T's, making sure it's something you actually want to buy, and if it's not, then you can cancel your contract accordingly to the contract, of course. But during this due diligence phase usually is the time that you're going to do this work to confirm you want it, and if you don't, you cancel. If you do, you progress forward. So, Dakota, can you dive into these step-by-steps of due diligence, please?
Yeah, well, just some things that I've learned over the years, and a lot of times things I hear people say that I kind of interject, and I'm like, hey, you might be thinking about that wrong. Like, for example, one of the first things that I see, not actually with new investors. New investors are better at this. It's with experienced investors that I see them make this mistake, is that I will always hire an inspector. Right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You hear about home inspections for smaller, right? Yep. But even for larger commercial residential projects, I'll always hire an inspector. And I think this is a trap people fall into, because as we get experience, and especially as we do rehabs and we become more handy and we have our crews and stuff, we get this mentality of basically we get paid to fix problems and we're confident that we can fix any problem. Right?
Yeah.
And that's true. I'm sure that they can fix any problem, but can you afford to fix every problem?
Right.
So a lot of times they get so cocky that they think that they can do a quick walkthrough themselves, identify all the problems, and they don't spend the $400 to $1,500 to have an inspector go through it.
Yeah.
And that's just overconfidence, and unfortunately, it's a hard lesson everybody needs to learn. But still, to this day, I hire an inspector, and here's what I think people miss. There's few things that provide as high of a return on investment as the money you spend on an inspector. Because I have in dozens and dozens of transactions never ever once had the inspector not pay for his fee.
Right.
And oftentimes he's paying multiples. So if I pay that inspector, this is an example, right? Just on the Paramount, the 24-unit complex that I bought last year. I paid an inspector, cost me $800 to go run through the building.
Yep.
Using what he found, I got a $35,000 cash concession to me.
Oh, nice.
So what's the ROI on that?
Yeah, very good.
Right? Yeah, it's always worth it. And almost every seller expects to give you something in terms of concessions. So so just do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And contact your local building official. After coming out of that nightmare story, when I started buying heavily in some of the Idaho markets, before I bought anything there, the first thing I did was make an appointment to go sit down to the building department and the planning and zoning department and basically say, what's your master plan as a city? What's your opinion on what I want to do? Are you guys going to be happy to see this or unhappy to see this?
That's smart.
Because I can't go through this again.
Right.
And, in that particular city where I'm investing, they're pretty much like, any improvement is a good improvement.
Oh, good.
And they stay out of the way. And I can tell you that's an incredibly different experience than the one that I experienced on this last property. And I think people underestimate how much easier it is to make money and profit when the city is on board with your plans.
Oh, yeah.
Right? When they're not just going to allow you to do it, but they want to encourage you to do it.
Right.
Then all those different conversations about, hey, how can we make this easier for you? How can we subsidize this? I've talked to them. They've been willing to increase density for me.
Wow.
They're very willing to trade. And when you get to negotiate with a city, I think that's really where you start to get to the next level of investing. Where you're making, where even making $100,000 seems to look small.
Yeah.
So, so I've always liked to talk way more about mistakes than I like to talk about making money. Because to me, making money has never changed. Buy low, sell high, hold on to property.
Right.
It's not hard, and I think that people like to talk about it way too much. I think that talking about losing money and making mistakes is way more valuable.
Yes.
Because making money is easy, holding on to it's hard.
Right.
And so I'll share something that, I just actually found out yesterday.
Oh.
Is opportunity zones, right? Have you heard this buzzword about you invest in an opportunity zone, 5-year you get a step up, 7-year you get a step up, in 10 years you're tax free no matter how much money you make, right?
Right.
That's a great opportunity.
Right.
So I bought a property in an opportunity zone.
Oh, nice.
But guess what?
What?
I didn't call my CPA or attorney, which I'm kicking myself because I just told you that I learned this lesson to call your attorney,
right.
years ago, and then I didn't follow it again myself, and here I am, right? You have to set up a qualified opportunity fund before you purchase the property, or it doesn't get the benefits.
Oh no!
Right. So due diligence is call your attorney, call your CPA first, and just say, "Look, this is what I'm looking at doing.
Yeah.
Do you see any red flags here?"
Yeah.
Because worst comes to worst, it's a 30-minute conversation that you spend $100 on.
Yep.
Best comes to best, it's a 2-hour conversation that you spend, $1,000 on, but you save yourself $100,000.
Yes.
So I cannot state that enough. Is a good CPA, which is admittedly a needle in a haystack.
Right.
And a good attorney.
Yeah.
They pay for themselves. They're worth every dollar, truly.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I would suggest that I think a lot of people skip is when they're buying multi-units, they just assume that since this building looks like a 4-plex or looks like a 5-plex or whatever, that's what it was built to be and that's what it's intended to be, and how could it be anything else, right?
Right.
But not true.
Yes.
Zoning changes over time, permits get lost, records get lost. So, always go and get a rebuild letter.
Yep.
Right? Basically a letter from the city saying they acknowledge this building is, even if the zoning is currently single family, they acknowledge that this building is a 4-plex, will allow it to continue to be a 4-plex, and most importantly, say that if it burns down or something happens to it, that they're going to allow you to rebuild it. Because what happens when you buy a building that's worth $400,000 as a 4-plex?
Yeah.
But the city doesn't recognize it that way, and now you have a 4-plex that you can only use as a single-family home, and you're spending money trying to fight through the grandfathering status, or it burns down, and either insurance won't cover it, or they won't let you rebuild it, so you're upside down. It's a huge pain, and it's a 20-minute conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
super smart.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I've learned along the lines, scoping sewers.
Yep.
Most inspectors won't do it.
Yep.
Right? And that's fine. If your inspector won't do it, call a plumber that will.
Yeah.
Because sewer lines are oftentimes not covered by the insurance.
Yeah.
And when they go wrong and they rupture, it's not just the cost of replacing a sewer line, right? Which I think is on average going to run you $12 to $15 grand out of pocket.
Yes.
It's the damage done to your units when this stuff backs up, you've got sewage, you're doing remediation, your tenants are moving out, that's hotel money, that's vacancy, that's a lot of problems, right? So I think that people really try to skimp and save money on due diligence when it's the opposite. You should be dumping money into due diligence because the ROI is so high and money that you don't have to spend.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Becoming
a millionaire is all about good offense.
Yes.
Staying a millionaire or becoming a multi-millionaire is all about good defense.
Right.
Because your systems get automated along the way.
Right.
I
love that.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of lessons when it comes to due diligence about how I should be spending my time and I say write your due diligence checklist down.
Yes.
And never stray from it.
Smart.
And follow the rules. You have to create rules to protect yourself from yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about being an investor and a self-employed individual, the only one that's really going to take your business down is you.
Right.
And young entrepreneurs will 9 times out of 10 always struggle with ego suspension.
Yes.
And it's how could they not, right? When you're young and you're making huge amounts of money, you tend to think that you're doing something that's never been done before, and you start to discount all the advice from those who have come before you, and that's fatal.
Absolutely. I have a buddy out of Chicago. He lives in Chicago. He purchased. He didn't purchase. He was actually under contract on a 230 unit apartment building. He had spent $60 grand in due diligence and walked away from the contract because all that due diligence told him he'd lose more if he bought it. It was like you said, you need to spend more to discover those potential nightmare that could come up.
Right. Don't risk 1 million trying to save the last million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And your friend sounds like he was very disciplined.
Yes.
You know, and I've learned that, especially as a young investor, somebody said this to me, I think as an insult, but he said, Dakota, you know, I think I got you figured out. You're a bottom feeder. And I was a little bit offended at first, but I came home, and this is some wisdom from Hannah here, but I realized that's a compliment. Because that's absolutely true. When you're a young entrepreneur, you win by being scrappy.
Right.
You win by boots on the ground, seeing opportunity where nobody else sees opportunity, and taking risks that everybody else has passed on. And that is how I built my fortune.
Right.
So be scrappy. Be that bottom feeder. Do it with pride.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be a bottom feeder, which I believe is what you're going to have to do to really get started, you're just as likely to lose your money as make your money if you're not following these steps in your due diligence.
Awesome. That is awesome. What do you prefer to purchase? Seems like you've done both. A multifamily that is rent ready and you just move in and you've got it, or a multifamily that you have to renovate?
A multifamily that I have to renovate.
Got it.
Every single time. When you're young, you've got lots of time, but not a lot of money.
Got it.
So play your resources where you have it. And it's the ability to grow, and it's the ability to work hard, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. Rent ready is for people with money, people with time, and people, you know, it's simply for people that we're not right now.
Right, yeah, awesome. Dakota, first of all, thank you again for joining me on the show today. Where can people find you, get in touch with you?
I would tell them to go over to dwinvestors.com. That's one of my companies. It's my main umbrella company.
Okay.
And, you know, DW Education is going live in 2 months, where we try to go in depth in all of this. There's like 20 hours of footage in there with animations and quizzes, and you know, they'll be able to go to that website as well, and it'll be good.
Excellent, excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening today. I hope you guys got a lot of value from Dakota. Dakota, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Yoshi.
I really appreciate it. Guys, if you've missed any of this, you can always go to www.utahhomesweethome. Check out our social media links on our website. We record these. You'll be able to listen to them again at your leisure. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day.